In this video, I'm going to be showing you a little bit about arrays in Java. So if you're not sure, an array is like uh, a way of holding multiple values in a single variable. So let me just show you what I'm talking about here. So I'm just going to create a new project. I'll call it array example. Okay, give it a second to come up here. And we'll get started. Again, I'm just going to remove my comments here. Now, here's a situation. Like, imagine I've got a bunch of people that I need to store and print them out. So I could go something like this. So string name 1, name 2, name 3, name 4, like this. And then I can set the names. So name 1 equals John. Name 2 equals Sally. Name 3 equals Tim. Name 4 equals Julie. Okay, and then I can print them out. Println, and I can print out name 1. And I'm just going to copy and paste this line. Again, this is just demonstration purposes. So here's what I could do if I had 4 names. So I could run that, and the 4 names would work. Should see John, Sally, Tim, and Julie, right? Now, what if I asked you to do this with 1,000 names? Okay, this would be very, very difficult to do. You would have to have 1,000 variable names, 1,000 lines where you're assigning them, and 1,000 print statements. It becomes very difficult. Imagine you're a really large company and you've got a huge list of customers that maybe is in the hundreds of thousands or in the millions. If you want to keep track of them in a program like this, you wouldn't be able to. It's just physically, it's just too big, right? So what there is in pretty much every language in the world, there's something called an array. An array basically is a single variable name that can hold multiple values. So I'll show you how I would replace this with an array, and it'll behave the exact same way, and it'll be a lot more efficient. So I'm just going to comment that out, and I'll do the same program with an array. So what I can do is I can go string, name, I'm going to put square brackets, open and close square brackets, and I'm going to say that this is equal to new string square bracket 4. Oops, I put my semicolon wrong line. Okay. What this line of code does right here is it basically tells Java, hey Java, we're going to create a string variable. I'm going to call it name. And the fact that it's got square brackets means it's going to be a list of names. So it's going to be an array. This is the indicator it's an array. And you also need to actually create it. So you have to say that it's equal to a new string. And in the square brackets here, you have to specify its size. So I'm going to have basically an array of size 4 that contains all strings, and it's going to be called name. So the way you're going to think of it is think of it like a rectangular box, basically, and you're going to keep putting different strings into the box. So what you could do now is you can give them values. So you can write name. Now, instead of using name 1 right here, what I'm going to use is name square bracket 0 equals quotes John. Now you might be wondering, why am I starting at 0 and not at 1? So when you have an array, the index numbers, that's the location number of each box. So each box has a number, basically, is the way you want to think of it. The first index number is always a 0 when it comes to arrays. So it never starts at 1, it always starts at 0. So when you're identifying the box or the location number or the index number, whatever you want to call it, you need to start it at 0 all the time. Okay, so I'll just fill in the rest. Name 2 equals Tim. Name 3 equals Julie. And I made a typo, I put time instead of Tim. Okay, so now I've actually filled in the array with the 4 strings that I wanted. Now I'm going to go ahead and print them out. System out, println. I think I print out name square bracket 0. So that means the name at location 0. You can do the same thing. Name at location 1. Oops. And I'll just copy this for the other 2. So this will be 2 and this will be 3. So This should behave the exact same way. It should print out John, Sally, Tim, and Julie because it's printing out the names using an array. Now, the fact that I've used an array, I actually didn't save any lines of code here. We can make some of the stuff a little bit more efficient. If you notice about these lines, the only thing that's actually changing is the number inside of here. And it's going 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So what you can do is you can replace that number with a variable. And if it's a variable, you can use a loop to print this out real easily. So I'm going to comment this out again. And I'll print it using a loop instead. Oops. So print using a loop. So if I'm going to print out the names, right, I could do this. So I need it to go from 0 and stop at 3. So I can use a for loop. So for int I equals 0, I less than 4, and then I plus plus. So we're going to start the I value at 0. We're going to keep going while the I is less than 4. So it'll stop at 3. It'll do 3 and then that's it. I plus plus makes the I go up by 1. Now all I have to do is to print it out like this. Name, square bracket I. And that should do it. So what will happen now is it's going to keep running this line, but this variable right here is going to increment each time. It'll be 0, then it'll be 1, then 2, then 3. So this should replace this. So let's find out. So we've already shortened it. So we basically have 2 lines of code. Well, it's a curly bracket here, but 2 lines of code instead of 4. Should still work the same way. And this would also work even if there was like a million items in the array. You would just change this number to 1,000,000. And what you can actually do, if you really wanted to get smart with it, is you can actually, instead of putting a 4, you can actually use the size of the array here. What you can do is this. You can write name dot length. And if you look at the length, what this is this is the size of the array is basically what it is. So that'll work the same way too. So as long as you start at 0, just keep going up to the length of the array, just like I did here. And that'll still work. Okay. Now, another thing you could do too is instead of having all of them like typed in manually like this, like what if you wanted to use the keyboard? Okay. So let's get rid of all this code here. It's going to clean it up just a bit more. I'm going to create the scanner class. I'm going to say input equals new scanner and then system.in. And I've gone over this before in some of my other videos. I'm just going to fix my imports. Okay. Now, what I could do is something like this. I'm going to change the way that I'm filling in the array. So instead of filling it in manually like this, I'm going to use the keyboard. So let's go with another loop. I know I'm going to do 4 of them, so I can use the same loop that I have here. And I can reuse the I variable as well. It's no big deal. Okay, and we're going to fill in the array. So we can go like system.out print. Let's print, please enter friend number. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach in I plus 1. Name. Okay. So if you take a look, it's going to say, please enter friend number. Then it's going to print out the value of I plus 1. I'm just writing I plus 1 for the user's sake, only because it starts at 0, right? I don't want it to say, please enter friend 0's name. So I want it to say friend 1's name, right? Even though it's going to be stored into spot 0. Okay, and then I'm just attaching an apostrophe S and then name colon at the end, just so it looks better. And then I'm going to do an input. So I can write name at location I, because I'm cycling through the loop here, is going to equal input dot next line. And we should be able to get rid of these. So let's see if this works out. So there's 2 things. So right here, this is filling in the array. And then this section down here is print the array using a loop. So let's try it out, see if it works. Okay, so the first line says, please enter friend 1's name. Let's say Timmy. Please enter friend 2's name, Christopher. Friend 3's name, Jimmy. And friend 4 will be Kim. And they came out, see? Timmy, Christopher, Jimmy, and Kim, exactly the same way. Now, this doesn't look so great for me. I might clean this up and do something like this. Friend, number, we'll do the I+1 thing again. Oops, sorry, I keep hitting the wrong button here. I+1. I think I need a colon and a space. Like that. So it should say friend number 2, for example, then a colon, space, and then a name. Let's just see how that looks. Just so it looks a little bit better. Let's do A, B, C, D for this time. Yeah, that looks great. So my user output looks really, really nice right now. So the nice thing right now, though, is, like I said, I'm using an array. I can put in 10 friends, and it will work with 10 people now. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. So it's very, very flexible, the code that I've written. It works for any size array. So all I got to do is change the size of my array right here, and I will also change the length of my loop, and it'll still work for everything because I'm using variables for my location numbers. So just remember that an array, they have index numbers, and they always start at 0, and they go up to, like I said, if you got 4 boxes, it would go up to 3. It's always one less than it, right? There's one last thing I do want to show you about arrays. And what if I wanted to do like, just a manual array of integers? So imagine I've got like int ages, and maybe I want to store a couple of ages in here. What I can do is I can do it all in one shot. So I can do something like this. You put a curly bracket and go 2 or 3, 6, 9, something like that. Okay, that's an alternative way of making an array. So this does a few things all at one shot. So what it does is it creates the array, and it also fills it in with the values 3, 6, and 9, and they're integers. So if you remember previously, what I had to do was I created the array of size 4, for example, and then I filled it in one at a time, right? So if you know exactly what the values are going to be, and they're not going to change, okay, you can fill it in manually just like this. And Java will count how many there are in the curly brackets, and it will make the array of that size. So this only works if, like I said, you know exactly what everything's going to be. You're not going to use the keyboard to fill it in. This is an alternative way of making an array, and you should be aware of how that works. Okay? So, yeah. So this is just a little demo of me filling in an array, printing out an array, and me creating an array in the second fashion here where I just manually create it all in one line.